Welcome to the Beyond Atheism podcast, with me, Nathan Alexander, and my co-host, Todd Tavares. Moving beyond questions of God's existence, this podcast asks, what's next in a world without God? If you're enjoying the show so far, make sure to like and subscribe, rate and review, and consider supporting us on Patreon.
When we think about the growing power of atheists and godless people, we often overlook the real work that goes into organizing people into a political force. More than just increasing numbers, power requires that seculars mobilize into forms of collective action. For years, non-believers have been increasing in numbers, but how do we turn numbers into action? To answer this, we are joined by Sam McGuire, the National Field Director of American Atheists. Sam, welcome to Beyond Atheism.
Hey, how you doing?
Oh, doing great, and it's great to have you with us today.
Thanks for inviting me. Happy to be here.
Thanks, Sam. Looking forward to chatting with you. Just to get started, can you talk about what drew you to atheism? Were you raised religious?
The backstory question. Sure, I can do that. So I was raised, I tell people I was raised as a Christmas, Easter Catholic. Both my parents were Catholic, my extended family was Catholic, but we only went to Christmas with my extended family. Went to Easter sometimes. My mom would find whatever local church she heard had a good pastor, a good sermon, a good choir, a good band, and we would go there. I grew up in Amherst, Massachusetts, which is super uber liberal, and even the churches there are very liberal. Also in New England, by the way, people don't talk about religion. Nobody asks you what church you go to or what your religion is at all. It's just sort of a verboten topic. So that was my upbringing, and Amherst is a 5-college town. It's, very liberal, very educated. And then I moved to Southern Maryland, where I am now. And Southern Maryland, though Maryland is a blue state and pretty liberal overall, the southern counties are very conservative, very Christian, very white. So I kind of was like, where the heck did I land right now?
Yeah.
And so I started sort of having to define more what I really believed in, what I thought. And I landed on humanism first, as many people do when they're sort of figuring out how to define themselves. And then that very quickly became, the first 2 sentences of describing what I thought would be that I don't really believe in God either. So that landed me in atheism. I would say that a strong reasoning for that was my partner and husband now. He would logically argue with me all of the time about everything. So I often tell people I don't recover from religion. I recovered from woo, because my family of origin, was into horoscopes and things like that. So not necessarily coming out of a bad religious, but just sort of like, okay, homeopathy, not really a thing, guys. So interesting.
Wow. See, like, I also grew up in Massachusetts, and I think my experience was like, yeah, you don't talk about it, but you pretty much assume it from people based on backgrounds. But, well, did atheism inform your activism, or did activism tend to inform more of your atheism? Which were you drawn to first?
So I would say that I started a community group first here in Southern Maryland, a secular humanist group that became part of a chapter of the Washington Area Secular Humanists. And we started doing what groups usually start with, right? We're going to gather in the pubs. We're going to have some drinks. We're going to have some dinner. We're going to meet at a library. We're going to talk about various topics, bring in educational speakers. That's where a lot of groups start out, honestly. And so then we moved into community service spaces. So we started doing book drives and coat drives and adopted a highway. And then from there, we got involved in local politics. There's a whole story about that I can share with you if you want me to.
Please do. Yeah. We'd love to hear that. But I mean, this is still as a secular humanist, right?
Yeah. I mean, so the Washington Area Secular Humanists, most of the folks there are atheists. It's one of those things where a lot of the time atheist groups are humanist groups and humanist groups are atheist groups.
Mm-hmm.
And that's fine. I tell people use whatever label it is that makes you happy and comfortable. And I use the labels separately myself, not so much anymore now that I'm a professional atheist. But, when I was involved in community organizing at the local level and just getting involved, sometimes I would say I was a humanist because that opened up some conversations. And sometimes I would say I was an atheist because I wanted to have a different kind of conversation. And so I'm not one that says, you got to use that atheist label because uh, you know, I understand if you live in a place in Indiana that you don't feel comfortable telling people you're an atheist, then tell them you're a humanist. That's fine. You're an atheist. I know you're an atheist. It's cool.
Yeah. So, do you want to tell the political story that you mentioned?
Man, it's a long story, but I will give you the
That's fine.
short and dirty version.
We're freeform. You can go as long as you want.
Yeah.
So here in Southern Maryland, as I said, we started our secular humanist group, and we were meeting in the library and doing educational talks and community service things. And the local library booked a speaker to come in and do a sex ed talk. And the idea behind the talk was it was geared to teenagers. And she wanted to have the teenagers come in and have a frank and open discussion about science-based, medically accurate, LGBTQ inclusive sex ed. That doesn't sound like a big problem, right?
No.
It was a huge problem. It was terrible. So there was enough people organized against this class that the library ended up canceling it. And a bunch of us went to the Board of Library Trustees meeting and the County Commissioners meeting, and not just from SMASH, from other groups around the area, and, tried to convince them that they were making the wrong decision, and they still kept the class canceled. So my group, SMASH, Secular Humanists of Southern Maryland, SMASH, came in and booked the library room and had the class anyway. So that caused an uproar. There was meetings at the county commissioners. There was like an hour and a half long public forum of people talking about how this was so terrible for our community and for our kids. Keep in mind that parents had to sign up these teenagers for this class. They had to drive them to the library. They had to drop them off. They had to sign them in. So it wasn't anything that was, wild. And the instructor was a well-qualified person to teach this class. So that was like our introductory thing into getting involved in local politics. We had county commissioners speaking out against our group. We had people petitioning at the state level to change how the library board was appointed so that they could change how the meeting room policy worked. It was a lot. So,
and then did it change at one point from sex ed into like the secular humanists have got to go?
Oh yeah, we were called. That time wasn't quite as bad as when we then organized a drag queen story hour at the same library.
For the kids.
It was for the kids, and everyone was so excited. We had like 125 people sign up for it.
Oh my God. These sound like incredibly successful events.
Yeah. No, people in the community wanted them. But other people in the community clearly did not want them. So it caused protests and counter protests and all of this stuff. It was really quite amazing. And also local news coverage in the paper and the talk show radios and letters to the editor back and forth. And what happened is we got a lot more new members. That's what happened.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Wow. And is that where did you go from there then, in terms of your direction in organizing and activism?
So at that point I was on the board of Washington Area Secular Humanists, which is one of the only regional humanist atheist organizations in the U.S. There's 14 chapters of Washington Area Secular Humanists underneath their umbrella in the Virginia, Maryland, D.C. area. So I became leadership in that organization. And then I became the volunteer coordinator for the Reason Rally 2016 and was on that board. And so that's where I kind of started organizing in a more broad sort of way than just my little corner of Southern Maryland. And so then after that, I was volunteering for American Atheists actually first. as a state director, which is a volunteer position we have across the country. And then this position became available and I applied for it.
Wow.
I wanted to ask about the your experiences at the Reason rallies. I guess I don't know if you were involved formally with the one in 2012, or maybe you were just attending it. But I wonder if like you could sort of compare and contrast the two, or maybe first say what actually is the Reason rally.
So first of all, the Reason Rally, if you never have heard of it, 2012, there was a Reason Rally in March in DC. It's held on the National Mall. All of the major secular organizations came together and co-sponsored it. And it was a day-long, in 2012, it was a day-long rally on the mall, full of speakers and entertainers and all of that good stuff. I was an attendee at that one. I was not involved in organizing it. Washington Area Secular Humanists did the volunteers for that one, but I wasn't officially part of that organization yet. So 2016, same idea in DC on the National Mall, but it was surrounded by a bunch of shoulder events. There was social events and a mini convention and dance parties and all sorts of fun stuff.
That sounds nice. So it sounds like it got bigger.
Yeah, it got longer.
Okay.
There was many more components to it.
Became more complicated.
Yeah, it was more complicated. We had about 215 volunteers, which, is more than many regional conventions, just in volunteers. So that was my main task there, was to wrangle and sort of organize all of those volunteers to cover all those different events. We had comedy shows and different things going on all weekend. So it was a lot to make sure people were where they were supposed to be and covering booths and all of that kind of thing.
So was that just sort of like a two and done then?
There are no more Reason rallies, correct? Really, I mean, honestly, it was billed to be a once in a lifetime Reason rally in 2012. The idea was it would be a one and done. And then the board reconvened and decided, well, maybe we'll try one in 2016. It's another election year. And maybe we can sort of focus on getting out the vote and trying to talk about those sorts of issues. And it was successful in that, I think. And it was just, the next decision was, do we do one in 2020? And I will tell you, planning things on the National Mall is just damn difficult. It's really hard.
Yeah,
because you have to apply for a permit, and they only tell you what your permit space is, and if you're approved for such and such date, less than a year ahead. So you have a year to pull together this whole thing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So and yeah, if there are over 200 volunteers, there's a lot happening behind the scenes.
Right.
So it sounds like these two events, I mean, if we're going to look at it like, two sides of a coin here, like the Reason Rally, this big one-time action, all the groups go to a place, and it sounds it's more about messaging. Whereas what you came up with with the local group Smash, much more pointed. What was your takeaway from both of these? Were you drawn more to one style than the other?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm the national field director for American Atheists. So
yeah,
clearly my passion is local community groups and helping them succeed, and really building a place that people feel like they can plug in as atheists and really find their people, their tribe, right? Their community. And so having done that from scratch here in my little corner of the world, I feel like I can give a lot of good advice, but I'm also a person that really likes to, you'll hear me talk about my state directors all of the time. They're the volunteers that are doing this all across the country, and they really do such a fantastic job, and they make us look really good, and I love them.
Well, one of the most impressive part of the story that you told so far is that move from getting the group to go from the sort of like inward focused to the outward focus, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas like when you forming the groups, right, you got to build the in-group dynamic. You have to have in-group solidarity, right? You find your tribe and you bring people together and you you build this cohesive group, right? But it doesn't always turn into any form of social activism, even like book drives or coat drives or get collecting cans and stuff like that. People often want to stay in their comfort zone, or they just want to socialize, right? How, like, what can you say to atheist groups or members who are facing either sort of resistance or themselves they aren't comfortable making that shift to becoming a political group or an activist group or social, like a community group?
Yeah, so I would say that as I mentioned before, moving into the community service space is often easier for local groups as a first step for sort of getting involved. And here's the thing is that you have members of your groups that are already doing community service, right? They're already volunteering at animal shelters walking dogs. They're already involved in soup kitchens in their community. They're already doing these things. So it takes somebody saying, "Hey, let's go do this that so and so is already doing. We're all walking dogs. I like dogs. Let's all go walk dogs together." Right?
Yep.
Hey, let's go adopt a highway. Let's, by the way, if you adopt a highway, you get a free billboard because they put up a sign for you
Oh,
with the group. So again, it's free advertising. So, go and do a highway cleanup and then go get lunch after that, right? Go get a drink or a beer after that. So that's often the easiest thing for people to move into. And I tell people all the time as organizers, pick something that you're happy to do anyway, or that one of your members is happy to do anyway. Because there will be times where you show up and you're the only person there when you're first starting these things, right? So if you're happy cleaning the road with just your family, then just go do that. If you're happy just going ahead and doing a can collection or a school supply collection outside, but you're doing it in the name of your group, right? You're doing it in the name of your atheist group. And people get to see you outside Staples collecting school supplies for kids, and they're like, "Oh gosh, I didn't even know there was an atheist group in the county or in the city." And so it also just gets you out there doing these good things, wearing your atheist hat, as it were, right? You might have been doing them anyway, but now you just put on that atheist hat, put on your community group shirt, and go out there in the public and do it together. So that's the community service piece of it.
Yeah.
The activism piece of it is generally you have to have the group be mad about something. So our group was really mad that they had canceled this sex ed class because all of the commentary was so bigoted and so homophobic and so awful, because the person who was coming to teach the class was a non-binary LGBTQ person, and people lost their minds that they were going to be in a room with teenagers and that somehow that would turn them gay, I guess. I don't know exactly.
And was this resistance very religiously motivated?
Of course. Yes, absolutely. I'll afterwards I'll send you the link of the meeting because it's bizarre. You know Footloose, the scene, the town hall scene in Footloose? I swear to God, that was my town. It was crazy.
Like where they outlawed dancing because of Jesus?
Yeah, where they were all just quoting Bible verses at the town hall and everything. That was my county commissioner's public forum.
Wow.
It was wild stuff.
In Southern
People
Maryland.
quoting scripture, it was wild.
Damn. So that's the key. Find something that makes people very, very mad.
Usually, yeah. So they get upset about something, and it could be anything. It could be a sex ed class at the library. It could be some piece of legislation that's trying to pass at the state level, right? In God We Trust has got to go on all the school walls. It could be the legislative prayer that happens before the city council meetings. There's lots of things that get people upset. And so the trick is to take that anger and or discomfort at being othered and turn it into something constructive, because we do a lot of standing around in bars and bitching about it.
Yeah, right, yes.
And not a lot of like getting out there and changing it.
Yeah, that's been sort of my experience. I mean, like moving around, like sort of attending different atheist groups in different places. Like the ones I was at, like in Canada and in the UK. It really never got beyond the stage of like being in the bars or whatever, or like occasionally, getting together for like a speaker meeting or something like that. But it is, I guess, like you said, like there is sometimes this like galvanizing incident, I guess, that can help to kind of push the group beyond their comfort zone, I guess. And I think the interesting thing is like that kind of being involved in community work and political activism that can sort of strengthen the sort of the community bonds that you've kind of created in the group, I guess.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. And, you can do that at all levels, right? I was talking about county commissioner things here. There's city councils, showing up at Board of Ed meetings right now is a really big thing, right? The other side is doing a whole lot of that. So we try to get our folks to organize and show up on the other side of those issues. State level, there's lots of groups out there who organize lobby days and go up and talk about legislation. And thankfully, some states get to organize around positive issues once in a while. But a lot of them get to organize around bad issues, right?
Right. Yeah, it's not always reactive. Well, this is a pretty good place to make that transition into your role as the field director. Give us some of the, I don't know, I want to say meat and potatoes. It doesn't sound very atheist. Tell us more about the role and what you've been doing there. What not just you, but the organization. What's the focus been? How do you guys operate?
Yeah, so I would say my particular role kind of has two prongs. We have 230 plus affiliate groups across the country. And those affiliate groups range from a meetup or a Facebook group, right? Like really loosely organized. We're going to go and hang out in a bar and bitch about religion and talk about politics and whatever, to highly organized 501c3s that have their own boards, that are nonprofits, that do their own fundraising. And those ones will be much more involved in at least the community service aspects of things, because they were finding a reason to get organized, which often might be that they wanted to take donations to go do something.
So that prong is sounds very grassroots.
Yes, it's absolutely grassroots. And so my job there is to find groups, ask them to affiliate with American Atheists. If you're a group leader listening right now and you're not affiliated, contact me and get affiliated. That's my commercial.
Yeah.
And we try to push out support and resources to folks. So if they're going to be, for instance, tabling at a Pride event, we'll send them stickers and buttons and rally signs and things for them to hand out, and hopefully get people to sign up on their email list and get more members, and get people more involved. We will send them our magazine for free so they sort of know what we're doing. We can help them with press releases and letters to the editor if they're doing that kind of work. If they have, say, a summer solstice event or winter solstice event, we can send out emails to our entire list and try to drive people to their local events. So that's that part of that work, is trying to help people build good communities and then also give them trainings. I went through it really quickly, but we have an acronym for what I said, which is ACEs, and that's activism, advocacy is the A, and C is community, E is education, and then S is service. And so talking to them about those four aspects and how you really get a community group running on all four cylinders, and it will become a thing, right? Then it becomes a thing that people want to be a part of, that they want to pay to be a member of, that they want to support, that they are proud to call their sort of home group and tribe. So that's the one part.
Yeah. So it sounds like a lot of facilitation, right? You have the groups, they have their own particular needs, and you just give them the support.
Yep. What do you need? I'll try to get it for you.
Yeah.
That's that part of that job. What can I do to help you run a better group, get more people involved, get more people feeling like they have a sense of community? We did the U.S. Secular Survey. Gosh, what is time? 2 years ago now?
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. I was like, that was just last week. No.
Yeah.
And one of the things that was there was a ton of great data in there. If you haven't looked at it yet, please do. USSecularSurvey.com.
We look at it all the time.
Yeah, and
It
the
keeps us
piece that was
going.
most striking to me, which is group organizers we know anecdotally, is that if they're part of a group, people are less likely to feel lonely and depressed and isolated, right? Which just makes sense. But we always have just sort of, as leaders, thought that was true, and now we really had some data backing that up. So really, that's part of my job, is to make sure people connect to those groups and don't feel so lonely and isolated. So the other prong of what I do a lot is we have a volunteer program called State Directors. And so we have state directors and assistant state directors in many states, not all states. And they are our volunteers. They tend to be more activisty. They want to be involved in protests, and they want to be involved in testifying for the legislator, and they want to be doing advocacy, and they want to be doing these things. They want to be, running different events, and really they're the activist types. And so we have a bunch of them in different states. Some states we're lucky enough to have whole teams. Florida, we have a whole team. Virginia, we have a whole team. They do really great work. And so basically they are our boots on the ground in a grassroots sort of way. So they'll let us know if they see church state violations, if there's an issue we should know about. They'll be the person that goes to the city council and speaks on whatever the issue is. We can help them with the talking points and what they might want to say. We have a litigation council. So if there's an issue they think is a legal issue, we can give them some advice on how to handle that. And if there's a press thing in the area, then they become our spokesperson. So if we have, a thing going on in Florida, then we would call the people in Florida and say who can talk to the press about this thing, or who can go and testify on this issue for us.
Oh, wow. But and you don't have that in every state.
Not every state. That's my long-term goal. Here's my other
Mm.
commercial for the night. If
Yeah.
you'd like to be state director in your state, shoot me an email.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll talk.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, one thing, just sort of thinking about that, like, how is the organization, I mean, like, organization of atheists generally, like, or political organization, like, how has it changed, I guess, since you sort of first got involved in the movement? Like, has organization kind of gotten tighter, do you think?
So I would say that since I become involved in the atheist community, there has been a pretty big shift towards working on things in coalition, firstly. And that means both within the movement and without the movement, right? So the national organizations really working together on various things and sort of coordinating what's going on and what we're talking about and which issues we're trying to attack, and all of those things. But also working in interfaith coalitions, working with broader coalitions on issues. And I would say that part of the reason that's happened is, if you looked at the US Secular Survey reports, then a lot of people find issues that we don't necessarily think of traditionally as church state issues important, right? So it used to be you would think about, oh gosh, I don't want "In God We Trust" and Ten
Yep. The
Commandment
money.
Right.
things, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
And that was it. That was the end of the story.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
And now it's really like, oh wow, these LGBTQ discrimination things are our issue too, because generally the other side is religious and they're objecting to people having equality based on their religion. Or medical aid in dying is an issue we work on a lot in advocacy, right? So the opponents of that tend to be the Catholic Church, and it's because they feel that it's not religiously moral. Same with reproductive rights, right? So a lot of those issues are things that we've kind of taken under our umbrella as atheist issues. That's really in the last, I want to say 5 years, we've really broadened that out. And I think that's an excellent and fantastic thing.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I think the Hobby Lobby ruling kind of necessitated it,
yeah.
where, I mean, it legalized religious discrimination.
Well, and I think the movement as a whole has changed too, right? Like, yes, we don't want Ten Commandments monuments on the courthouse lawn. We don't want that. That's not great. But there's so many more pressing issues that really impact people's day-to-day lives that I feel like we can make progress on, that, in my opinion, is just more important. And generally, people who are younger
Yeah.
also think it's more important. They're less inclined to care if there's an old stone rune thing on the courthouse
Yeah.
lawn than if their
Yeah.
friends are being discriminated against.
Yeah. And I mean, that brings up a great point. Like, is the generational divide. Like, I mean, we've all touched on this, like the idea, like, well, atheists are people who sit around and talk to other atheists about how religion is stupid, and how like that stereotype is really old and outdated now.
Mm-hmm.
It's turned into something very, very different, and there is this generational divide. Do you recognize it in the activism that you see?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, our most engaged volunteers and state directors are all, I say younger, but if you've been to some humanist atheist groups, you know what I mean by younger actually means like under 45-ish, right?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So, anyone, I am 49. So anyone younger than me
Mm-hmm.
and my age
Is
are
young.
just not really interested in debating about whether evolution is true and whether or not there's God, right?
Yeah.
Like we've already answered that
Yeah.
question. We're
Right.
done with it.
Right.
Now, what do we do with that information? Now, how do we affect the world around us? Now, how do we go out there and take our atheism and or humanism and put it in a positive light and get out in our communities and do these things and not just sit around in bars bitching about religion and debating whether or not evolution is true or the world is flat.
Although that is fun, but yeah, it's
Not for me. I tell people all the time, I'm like, I'm not a debater, I'm a doer. But I have a guy in my group who loves to debate. And so invariably we'll be tabling or collecting school supplies or doing a code drive, and someone will want to come debate us because that's just
yeah.
what happens. And so I take this one guy and he knows, I'm like, take that one over there. And he takes him about 10 feet away from the table.
Right.
And they just stand there for like an hour debating. And I'm like, whew, thanks. So you have those in the group, but put them to work doing something
Right?
useful.
I love that division of labor that's in there, right? They've still got a role. Everybody belongs there.
We had
Everyone
one
can do
guy knew the
something.
Bible forwards and backwards and forwards and backwards. He was evangelical and ex-evangelical, and he could just quote the Bible up and down. And so we'd get people who would come and want to argue with us, and I would just go for it, David.
Yeah.
Go over there, argue with this guy about the meaning
Yeah.
of whatever verse, because I don't have that in me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh God, I can see it in my mind, and it's a beautiful thing. It's
But
amazing.
take them away from the front of my table
Yeah.
where I'm trying to collect supplies for children who can't afford them. Like, get out of my way.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wanted to ask, like going back to what you were saying a little while ago about broadening away from like sort of the traditional like bread and butter atheist issues. Do you think there's a risk of like broadening too far the focus such that it's like it's almost becomes more, well, I mean, I think one thing we've talked a lot about on the podcast is that atheists in general, it seems like, are lean more left kind of politically. But do you think there's a risk of like broadening too much that you're basically just sort of like a left-wing group?
Yeah, so, I mean, I go through this with community groups too, right? Groups have different flavors, and you can make your group whatever you want it to be. If you're the person organizing the group and running the group, you can decide what sort of membership you want to have, what sort of issues you want to take on, what sort of things you want to tackle or not tackle, right? But if people in your group disagree with you, they will go and either start another group, which is what I
Right.
did, or go
Right.
find another group that exists that they agree with more. And that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. I don't think that we can, as group organizers, be all things to all people. If we do, then we're not really going to be effective at anything, is my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, is this something that you've also seen? And how has American atheists responded to things like climate change, which at first blush, right? It's not a church state thing. It doesn't seem that way. But the younger generation says it's a huge thing. And
Yeah, I mean, I would
then,
make an argument that it actually, we in American atheists don't focus on climate change that much as a policy issue, even though it's been very important to a lot of our members.
yeah. Well, could you just walk us through like how you have addressed it in the past, or like how you're doing it now?
Yeah, so that's what I was about to say, is that it's not that we don't find it important, it's that we're a very limited small staff, and there's only so many things we can work on at once, and there's so many bad bills everywhere right now, in particular, that is just, it's a lot. So I mean, I would actually argue in some cases it is a church state issue, because a lot of the people who deny climate change do so from their religious background, that they think that, God put us on this planet to rule it, and we can't actually cause any harm to it. And it doesn't really matter, because we're all going to go on to an afterlife, and who really cares about the planet, right?
Yeah. I mean, God promised he's never going to flood the earth. That's why we have rainbows.
Again, anyway.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I would argue there are arguments to be made that climate change actually is a church state issue, if we're looking at it the same way we've looked at the other ones, in terms of saying, if the opposition is coming from a position that their religion makes whatever policy choice, then we probably oppose whatever that is.
Right. So you guys, you don't veer off mission, I guess, is the thing.
We
is
try
that
not to.
fair to say? Like, yeah, it's when the opposition is religious, that's when it matters.
Yeah, I mean, that's a general good litmus test, is if you show up on an issue, who is the opposition and why, right? What belief system are they trying to put on somebody else?
Yeah. So with that in mind, and to motivate listeners into moving into the sphere of action, what are some of the issues that anger up the blood right now?
Oh my goodness. Right now, like on the state level?
Oh, go through everything. Yeah.
Oh, I couldn't. We'd be here for another 3 hours. It's awful. The state legislation is just a dumpster fire right now. We have a whole new staff person, Brett, who you should have on, Brett Parker. He's our state policy manager. So we basically had to hire a full-time staff person to track all of the crappy legislation across the country. And he's doing a bang-up job at it. Poor Brett. But I mean, we're seeing everything. We're seeing the abortion bans. We're seeing anti-diversity education bills. We're seeing in Florida, they're passing something, the parents' right bills. They're calling it the Don't Say Gay bill. Basically, if you go into a school and you're a student, you're not allowed to talk about LGBTQ issues or anything else that might upset somebody who comes from a religious background, basically.
Because I think they phrase it as religious rights, where you can't offend their religious rights.
Yeah, so there's parents' bills of rights is a big one. There's a ton of anti-trans legislation sweeping across the country. There's a ton of restrictions on reproductive health. There's more of our regular sort of kind of traditional things. There's moment of silence bills, where you have to have a mandatory moment of silence in the school day, which of course is not for prayer. The list is very, very long of really bad bills.
Good. So yeah, we've linked to the current project on, I think it's atheist.org. They have the state by state one. We'll make sure to link that below.
The Secular States Report.
That's it. Secular state. I'm not good at names, Sam.
That's okay. That's a really good one to sort of rounds up all of the issues that we're tracking. From a grassroots point of view, we also have Brett's managing a sort of new pilot program called State Advocacy Teams. And we have one in Virginia and one in Florida, one in Oklahoma. We're spinning up California and Colorado and working towards Missouri and a couple other states next year. And those are teams of activists and advocates who want to get together and track legislation, fight bad legislation, hopefully propose good legislation in the states where they can. And that's, it's a lot of work. So we really need those volunteers to help us. As you can imagine, trying to track all of the bills across all 50 states that we should be concerned about.
Right. Yeah. All right. One other thing I wanted to ask about, sort of related somewhat, is to what extent is kind of the mission of American Atheists to create more atheists? What role is there for propaganda for? I realize it's sort of has negative connotations, but what role, I guess, is for art?
You want us to get out there and proselytize?
Yeah. Do you see that as part of part of the mission, I guess,
I mean,
to do that.
there's
Yeah.
a lot of folks that do. I would say that the staff at American Atheists doesn't really see that as part of our direct mission, except for in the way of being out there and being atheists and being out about your atheism will encourage other people to be out about their atheism. And particularly if you're out there doing positive things, right? If you're out there engaging in civic discourse and testifying on bills and showing up at Board of Education meetings and collecting coats and school supplies and helping feed people who are homeless and houseless. If you're just out there with your atheism doing these good things and being public about it, that in its own right is probably going to make some other people go, gosh, I never really thought about this. And I never really knew that there was an atheist group in my city or a humanist group in my city, and find a way to connect in. And again, I mean, a lot of our, as I said at the top, we do a lot of interfaith work. And we do that not because we want to convince people to be atheists, right? We're not working with Catholics for choice because we want them all to become atheists. We're working with them because we're on the same side of the issue.
Well, that's fantastic. Nathan, what do you think? Should we move on to Can a True Atheist?
Sure. Yeah.
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 So we've got a lightning round, sort of to wrap up, called "Can a True Atheist?" And it's just tongue in cheek for the most part, about questions whether a true atheist can do such and such a thing. Like, can a true atheist say, "Oh my God," for example?
Yeah.
So, Sam, we've got a couple of questions for you and we'll count on you to tell us whether true atheists can do these things.
Yeah.
I mean,
And you can give an
ruin it
explanation.
from the
It's
start
not-
because I think true atheists can do whatever they want. But we'll play. Go ahead, do it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Okay.
you can expand on it as well. Don't feel
Okay.
limited. Don't get trapped into the yes or
Yeah.
no world.
Okay.
No worries.
Okay. So, for the first one, we'll see if they can do whatever they want.
Yeah.
Can a true atheist believe in God?
God, like the anthropomorphic type God? No.
Okay. Okay.
What? Yeah. Okay. Can a true atheist use the prayer emoji?
I mean, I think it's a high five emoji.
Ooh.
Yeah.
So-
High five.
Yeah.
So yeah, because I
Yeah.
give people high fives all the time.
All right. Okay. Oh, sorry, it's me. Can a true atheist believe in bad luck?
Sure.
Bad luck is part of woo. Can you believe in
Yeah.
is it holistic medicine? I can't even remember the terms anymore.
I mean,
Not
I
holistic.
guess it depends on how you want to put it, right? Like, man, I had a string of bad luck this week. It's one of those things where it's kind of more of an expression. Do I think that like there's somebody sending me bad juju energy that made me have bad luck, or that I walked under a ladder and so then that caused my bad luck? No. But did I have a string of bad luck, such as the sort of esoteric name of the word? Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
I had a
But
really
what
bad
if it's
week. I had
because
no
you're-
internet, remember?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, right. But could that have been because Mercury was in transit?
If you ask my mother, yes. But no.
Okay. Can a true atheist be a libertarian?
Sure.
There we go. Easy.
Okay.
Wow.
It's easy. They can be
yeah.
Republican, they can be Democrat, they can be Libertarian. I mean, if you look at sheer numbers, they're less likely to be Libertarian. They're less likely to be Republican, but
Mhm.
they certainly exist.
Mhm. Yeah. Can a true atheist be a pacifist?
Sure. I would say yes.
Okay.
Wow. This is too easy.
Yeah.
I told you I was going to ruin it from
More.
the very beginning because I think that everybody are individuals, whether or not they have the label of atheist.
Yeah.
So
I see why you want to teach children about sex at the library. You're very permissive. Can a true atheist wear crucifix jewelry?
Ooh. It depends. Did my grandmother give it to me? Like, does it have sentimental value? Maybe. You know,
How about if you're out collecting school supplies for children in
If
front
I'm-
of the
am
staple?
I gonna wear a crucifix then?
Yeah.
I mean,
would
I
you-
wouldn't.
You
I wouldn't
wouldn't.
personally, but that'd be kind of funny. Come to think of it.
Yeah.
It
That
send
would
mixed
really
messages.
confuse them. That would cause them to really need to go debate my friends over on the other side.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Can a true atheist dislike the label atheist?
That one's loaded.
Okay.
At the top, like I said, there are times where I use or did use labels other than atheists in certain places. And I get, hopefully, we're moving away from that, but I get why some people don't want to use the label because they'll be automatically judged, um, probably as having not a lot of moral character in a lot of cases, right? So they don't want to use that label on themselves. Um, but I think you can be an atheist and not have a belief in God and choose not to use that label.
Mm. Okay, last one. Can a true atheist remain passive politically?
I mean, there are too many people
Uh-huh.
in this country that are passive politically,
Hmm.
and they have all different faith traditions.
Right. Yeah. Right. Yes.
Uh-huh. That sounds like a dodge, Sam.
I don't know that that's a dodge, it's a fact.
Yeah.
Just look at the sheer number of people who don't show up to vote on midterms, right? And they're all over the spectrum. They're atheist, they're Christian, they're Catholic, they're Muslim, and they're just not engaged. And, that's a whole other rant we could go on about why people aren't civically engaged. But I'm not sure that that's an atheist issue or a not atheist issue. I think that's a United States of America issue.
Well, should we? Maybe we can change it as a way of wrapping things up.
Should they?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
No, they should not. They should get civically engaged in their communities, and they should be out there working towards whatever their goals and their passions are. So, one of the things that I often say to my volunteers, and I said this when I was a volunteer too, is fuck the bullshit and do the things. Get out there, whatever it is that you're passionate about, and go do it. It doesn't matter what it is.
I think that's the best advice I've ever heard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's definitely like good for a button or something like that. Yeah.
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 Well, I think that's where we'll wrap it up, Sam. This has been fantastic.
Yeah. Anything you want to plug, Sam?
Oh, please.
Yeah, I'm going to plug that we're having our national convention in April in Atlanta. And the website for that is convention.atheist.org. Sign up and come. It's going to be a blast. We're going to be really excited. We haven't had a convention since 2019 because of pandemic, and we're very hopeful that things are going to be safe enough, and we're coming down the backside of this Omicron wave. We're requiring vaccinations. We'll require masks if we feel like we need to do that to be safe. And it's always a super, super fun time. So hope to see you there.
All right. Yeah. Thanks again.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, that was Sam McGuire from American Atheists.
Fantastic.
That was a fun conversation. What did you take away from that, Todd?
Well, I mentioned during the interview that like we can kind of see all this stuff coming together, right? And this is part of the network of what it's looking like. Mm-hmm. And it really, to me, it does feel like there has been a change in maybe it's just that we're examining it, but to start to see what this movement looks like and what it's becoming and where it's going. That there's been an inflection point. Being an atheist is a different thing, and it looks a lot like, becoming politically active, flexing the muscle that's built up over time. Because you mentioned this, like the proselytization, like finding new atheists. Do you still see that as part of the Atheist Project?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's hard to know like exactly how to do that. I think there is definitely like a stereotype of atheists who are like, they're just go out and like like harass religious people and try and argue them out of their beliefs. But I don't think that's really ever been true. I think it's more like, like
more like we've had that done to us.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like if someone makes a YouTube video saying like, here are reasons for atheism or something like that, or they write a book about it, or participate in like a public debate or something, it's like you're not obligating anyone to watch the video or read the book or something. So it's hard to know like what an organization could sort of do. I mean, I guess they could sort of host debates or something like that if they wanted to invite someone to advocate for the theist side or something like that. But I think it's also a point, like Sam was mentioning, that just sort of being active in your community, and like sort of as an atheist or whatever, then it's like people are like, oh yeah, like I never really thought about atheism or humanism or whatever before. Um, and just sort of like, yeah, I mean, that can be something on its own just to kind of get people to, realize like atheists are real people, and like, they're not just whatever caricatures of, religion hating people who, yeah,
Yeah.
whatever. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and I mean, like the idea of like converting people, we don't really need to. We just need to get people to admit it or open
Mm,
up or find a place that's safe for them to do so.
hmm hmm
I mean, there are, we know every week there are atheists in church, right? Like,
hmm
and
Yeah.
it's
Right.
never going
Yeah.
to change. There's always been atheists. They've always felt they had to go to church. Now it's just giving them that alternative. And the thing that really impressed me about Sam's story and that experience is I think it's something that we've all experienced part of, right? We're either making a group or finding a group, but like how she was able to take leadership, right? That because we have a sort of non-hierarchical system, right? We hear this a lot about the humanists. That this structure is non-hierarchical. It's really great to not have someone tell you what to do or tell you what to believe or tell you how you have to act and what you need to read and blah blah blah. Um, but it also leads us to dismiss the importance of leadership in these organizations, and it's definitely a blind spot in how I think about things. But she's really pointed out, like, yeah, it's pretty easy to become a leader. All right, if there's something that you want to have happen, just do it. You can make it happen. You're going to do it anyway. It can be just you, and it's really empowering to know that that's it. I mean, we're our own obstacle at this point. It makes me feel worse about myself, but in terms of the movement, like it's possible.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, you can find Sam's email online if you want to affiliate. We'll link to the site below. But all of this, it's just like she said. I think it's the best pull quote I've heard in a while. Fuck the bullshit, do the thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think like one interesting thing is like she was talking about her own group in Maryland, like the one she was with initially. I mean, just the way it kind of like moved from being, which many atheist groups start out as just sort of a meeting group in a pub or whatever, how it actually sort of moved gradually into more politically active organization. And I think like, and also I think like that's where her current role is important, is that it then gives some greater structure and maybe a blueprint for how people can move their smaller groups like into more concrete kind of political action, like we sort of said at the outset about like atheists and agnostics and other non-religious people make up such a large percentage of the population now, that now it's a question of mobilizing them, and giving some structure to the numbers, I guess, so that yeah, that they can have political power.
Yeah, and I mean, we often get trapped or get suckered by this like demography is destiny narrative, which is just not true, right? Like it's not about the numbers, it's about how you use them.
Yeah, right.
So like that first wave of atheism, getting people that sort of introduction, that debut, right? The debutante at the ball. Oh my God, we're coming out as atheists. Atheists are this force that's just waiting to be unleashed. It's been unleashed. It just needs now. It's how do we focus it? And I mean, the great thing about Sam's experience is that she will now help you, right? We have people in positions where they can help you through information, through media contacts, through like help you with lobbying, whatever it is you need, it's out there and it's available. So a lot of that first wave heavy lifting has already been done. there are institutions in place that you can join.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're not forced to like reinvent the wheel with your if you've got a group sort of even getting it off the ground and yeah, turning it into something bigger. I mean, I think that's like super helpful because yeah, I mean like groups I've been kind of I don't know, I've never been super close to any of these groups, but like, just attending meetings here and there or whatever. It does seem like yeah, like even people in the leadership don't really know. I mean, this is my impression, like they're not exactly sure what to do and like
Yeah, yeah,
how to how to turn it into something bigger or whatever. And I think like that's where her role is so important. And like it's I mean, in this case it's not like hierarchy where she's sort of like dictating what people should do or something. I mean, it's like it's helpful, it's more helpful than like
yeah, yeah,
uh yeah
yeah,
than whatever. So
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, this maybe it may be in part be that generational thing where, before it was like I just want to be honest about myself and have a conversation and feel safe, right? And not get angry or not get attacked for the things I believe. And then later generations want to move past that. I can definitely see that. But yeah, I mean, likewise, I think one of the places we started with this a year ago was that our experiences were alienating, right? That we didn't that groups didn't have this sort of longer term focus or didn't have these concerns. I mean, to what Sam found in that situation was like, if you got one or two other people who feel the same way you do, you can just go and do that. And it's not like the Catholic Church where if you say like, oh yeah, we're Catholic and we're doing this, and they can excommunicate you, no one's going to kick you out of being an atheist,
Yeah, right,
right?
exactly.
Like,
Yeah, yeah.
you're an atheist who wants to start a blood drive. There's no head council that's going to say like, well, you can't be an atheist and donate blood. Are you insane? Yeah, you can't have a charity drive and be an atheist.
Yeah. And I think like yeah, I think I don't know if she said this directly or just or whatever, but like just that like there's a ton of flexibility in what an organization could look like and could do that and like that'll depend on like who the members are and like what sort of issues are in your community and so on. I mean, I think that's like really the best of both worlds, I guess, like having this kind of organizational structure in place to help out, but then like allowing for flexibility that differs based on local differences or whatever.
Even like different aims, different ideas. 'Cause her point that came pretty late was like, we don't, we're not going to focus on environmentalism because we're not an environmentalist group. But if there's an environmental problem that's being caused by a church, well, that's suddenly an atheist issue.
Yeah.
So if this is our organizing principle, like as long as you keep that in mind, right? As long as that's the issue, that religion is somehow interfering with your life, you're trying to remove the undue influence of someone else's theology determining how you live your life. That's a valid organizing principle, and you're going to have people who support you, whether it's left, right, or center.
Yeah.
Because what we
Yeah.
want is a secular world where religious people can't tell us, they can't force their religion upon us. They can't force us to behave as their religion believes, as their sky god believes.
Hmm. Yeah. And I think again like her example from the her Southern Maryland group. I mean like
SMASH, what a good
yeah,
name. Always
I know,
keep that in
right?
mind. When you found a
Yeah.
group, make sure it
Yeah.
has a good acronym.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, but just like that when they did the sex ed event, I mean like they ran into religious resistance and that actually like helped them to galvanize like more community members to get involved when they realized what like that religious people were trying to restrict what they wanted to do. I mean, and I think that's I mean it's almost like fortuitous, I guess, that it happened that way. I mean, so yeah.
Yeah, and those organizing principles, right? Like you come together around what you
Hmm.
share, right? And
Yeah.
then you act against what you hate. That's
Right. Right.
It's pretty true.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
no, so I mean, it's possible. It's just that we've just got to do it now, right? It's not. It's no longer one person reading a blog post or picking up a book and saying, "Oh my gosh, you know what? I realize deep down inside I'm an atheist. I never believed." And it's about, well, how am I going to lessen the impact in religion today? Who can I join with? What can we do together? And if we need help, like, how are we going to get it? We know that there are these outlets. So it's a very empowering talk. It's very positive. And when we put this together with all the other levels that we're seeing, right? And we know that right now they, as we heard, they're looking for state directors. If it's a volunteer position, or if you want to join up at the state level, right? We've got every level is covered now. We've talked to people from the Secular Coalition. They're working on federal issues. Your own local groups cover the local. Like, it's that network is building and growing, and we just got to keep doing it. All right. Any other takeaways, Nathan?
No. Well, I mean, many, but yeah, we should probably wrap it up.
Ah,
Yeah.
we don't. I know this. It's always a good sign when we just want to keep talking and talking and talking
Yeah.
and talking.
Yeah. No. But yeah, we should wrap up and encourage people to support, if you're interested, if you're enjoying the podcast, to support us on Patreon, and you can get access to some bonus content as well. And this one, Sam tells a story of, like, at one of these events, like, someone actually threw holy water at her, so which is kind of crazy. And also, we want to thank the audience, but in particular our supporters on Patreon, Lars, Debbie, and the AHS Plus blog.
Huzzah! Thank you guys very much making this possible. Anyone else we need? Well, we've got more plugs, don't we, Nathan? What else
Just
have we
to
got going?
encourage people to like and subscribe and
Oh,
rate and review, etc.,
how do I
etc.,
forget that?
etc.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like, subscribe, push the button, ring the bell, do whatever it takes. Yeah, check out our Patreon, and I guess that's it. Oh yeah, if you have any problems, if you're really mad about something, you're really full of rage, Nath G. Alexander, is that right? Nath G.
Yeah.
Alexander
Twitter, yes.
at Twitter.
Yeah.
That's the hot spot. I'm an internet hermit, so I don't exist anywhere. But yeah, thanks again. Keep listening, and we'll talk to you soon.